Hello, interns and associates, and welcome back to another episode of the Cubicle Podcast. I'm your co-host, JC Moss.
I'm your other co-host, Charlie Armstrong.
And thank you for tuning in. Every once in a while, we're bringing a guest and chat about all things work-related. From post-grad fear, to snatching that promotion, to the work drama, all is said in the Cubicle Podcast.
Today, we're joined by Professor Bridgit Lavery-Palmieri, an innovative retail executive and educator with over 25 years of experience in the fashion retail industry. She's led everything from merchandise strategy and product development to buying, planning, and marketing analytics. And now, she brings that real-world expertise into higher education, where she specializes in training, curriculum design, branding strategy, and consumer insights. We're excited to break down retail, leadership, and what it takes to succeed in the industry with Professor Lavery today. Thank you so much for being on here.
Hello, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Here.
It is an honor to be here, and we're so happy that actually, fun fact, are your first podcast ever, and in a great studio today. And it's a great day to talk about you and your experiences and to celebrate what you accomplish, so the youth and everyone that's watching can feel inspired and feel honored to be within your presence.
Awesome.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks.
So our first thing that we kind of want to talk about with you, obviously one of the big things that I pointed out before. So you have over 25 years of retail experience, and now you teach at FIT, as you were one of my professors last semester. And fun fact, you're actually one of the professors of my friend, actually both of our friends, John Rodriguez
My
this
roommate.
semester.
Do you know John?
Yes. So, which is amazing. We're honored to have you. I'm honored to have you as my professor and John. So if you worked over 25 years in the industry and you now teach the next generation, what led you from retail into academia? Like, what's the story there?
So it's kind of an interesting story. I spent the majority of my career at Macy's and Bloomingdale's. And probably about 18 years into my career, I kind of was given a choice, different career paths, had to make a decision, had two pretty traditional paths I could have chosen. But I decided at that time to kind of take a third path and write my own future, and decided to start my own consulting company and do freelance and small projects. And I happened to be invited as a guest speaker because a friend of mine was a professor at Parsons School of Design, and the chair of the department came and listened to me speak, and it was about customer insights and analytics and industry, and he asked me after if I would be interested in teaching. And I said, okay, maybe. Next thing you know, 3 months later, I am in the front of the classroom and I have 3 classes and I'm teaching, and it just all kind of clicked that this was the journey I was supposed to take. I always loved mentoring and training when I was in industry, but I kind of had the realization, this is what I need to do now. I need to share that experience and help develop the next set of retail leaders.
That's amazing. That's beautiful that you do that, honestly. And I think just like giving back to the community in need, and because they're so passionate about it, like they want to learn more about retail.
Yeah.
The fact that you're providing that education after all the experience that you have, and through what you were even like talking about like at this conference and everything, like that's amazing that you were given this opportunity. Like it was like meant to be. What was like your first class at FIT, and like how, like, and like, or the class that you were teaching, like how, like, what were you feeling like the first time? Like, were you like nervous, or like, what was it like to teach like your first class and everything?
So my first class at FIT was the retail math class, which is
I
really...
hate math, so I'm scared for that class.
You're not the only one.
Okay.
I hear that every single time from all the students. It's the class a lot of students dread, and it's my favorite class to teach. Because I always say from the very beginning, first day, that I'm going to teach them a whole different perspective. I am going to be able to teach them to look at numbers and think about product in their head, envision it. And when they walk into a store, or they're working on a website, to look at product and think about the numbers. And it comes full circle, because at the end of the semester, I ask them about, do you have a different perspective on industry, on data, on fashion, and also product? And the answer is usually yes. I can't walk into a store anymore without thinking about what kind of sales is that generating? Why is that in the front? Why is this product in the back? So it really comes full circle for them, and I love tying together that education, that theory, the know-how, with the fun, exciting piece of fashion and product.
Yes, absolutely. Was there any moments, because you studied fashion in college,
Yes.
that you connect from when you were a student learning about fashion that you now use to teach your students at fashion school?
That's a good question. Probably just the curiosity and tying the real to the books.
You've had so many like leadership positions and styles. What was like one moment like earlier like in your career that helped like shape your leadership style that like you have today?
There was a point in my career that I was interviewing for the next position, and I had met with all the executives along the way that had to make the decision, and had come to the very end, and it was the president of the company, and I was a little nervous, and he obviously saw that when I walked in. He's like, "Don't worry, I just want to get to know you." He's like, "You've interviewed with everybody. They're the ones that are going to make the decision. I just want to know who you are." And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And as I developed in my career, I realized it's not necessarily about how much you know, being an expert. It's all about building those relationships. Do you fit into the culture of the company? You know, do you click with your coworkers? It's all about building those trust, loyal relationships.
And that trait of authenticity, which we talk about so much in classes at FIT, how would you say authenticity plays a big role into the industry?
Huge. Yeah, and especially now, more so because the consumer is so educated. You need to be transparent. All companies need to be transparent. The consumers want to know, and you need to give them that information. And you need to be authentic. People can tell now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think like when you say like consumers are more educated now, do you think like one like cohort or like generation may be more interested and more educated than the other regarding like being a consumer and being a buyer? Like what do you think makes an educated consumer regarding like us as a whole? Or like when you were saying that, like I'm curious about what you mean like in that regard.
Okay. So now, because of technology, AI, social media, everything, the younger customers, the younger generations are consuming all this information, making decisions from such a young age. You know, older generations were never exposed to this. They didn't have that insight. So the people today, the younger generations, are really understanding what's out there. They're able to look from a bigger picture perspective and understand not just about, oh, I want to buy this t-shirt, but they want to know, where did this t-shirt come from? You know, who made this? Where was the cotton grown? They want all that information.
Especially fashion students. I feel like a lot of fashion students now, especially like learning it through school.
Yeah.
Like I know now, like when I go to like a brick and mortar store, I love to like now look at like and feel the garments. And sometimes like when you feel the garments, you can feel kind of almost like what the price point is. And when you even like look at the tag and you can look at the, you know, fiber content and how it was made and stuff like that, and the quality of how it was made, the educated consumer knows now what they want regarding like the price point, the quality, and all these different things, which leads you then to want to buy more into that garment and that quality.
Yeah.
And I feel like now, and I think you can kind of attest to this too, like our generation, like Gen Z, is so interested in wanting to thrift and investing in more sustainable ideals when it comes to consuming and buying products. Do you feel like that's true, or do you feel like you kind of like fit in that regard as well, where like you are the same way, where you really care about like the quality and like buying more sustainably? Like what's your feeling on that? Like
being in this industry, you always care more than anybody else when it comes to looking at product, looking at clothes, because you know how it was made. So you have an oversensitive eye to look at these things that most people would not see. So I'm going shopping, I'm looking at the stitching, I'm looking at the button. Will this last? Is this going to be good? How is this made? So I think that being in our industry, we're hypersensitive to that. But I also think now, because of the world that we live in, other consumers are starting to understand that and see that, and they're starting to question and understand. So I think people always know what they want, but they don't necessarily know why they want it. Oh, I want this, cashmere sweater because it's so soft. Well, did you know where this cashmere came from? And that's what they're starting to learn now.
And like what went into like buying those like products? Because I know like Shein, for example, like they could don't even get started on Shein.
That's for the other episode.
Yeah.
Because like Shein's like, I mean, first off, it's of course so cheap, so appealing. And for, especially like I think our age group, because we don't have that disposable income yet to purchase these like beautiful pieces that cost like quite some bucks.
Or just the average clothing store with inflation, how things have just gotten so pricey.
Right, exactly. Because how much more, especially with like the tariffs and like the value of like creating the items, because if it's so much labor costs and so much money just to import the items, then it's like the price of the retail price then has to go up to match everything else that's going into the production and just getting the clothes to where they need to be so people can buy the clothes.
Yeah.
And it's insane. And even with like Shein as well, and because I'm sure like you're not a Shein fan, and like it's just like it's just cheap clothes, cheap labor, and cheap quality, and obviously cheap prices. So everything is just very cheap. So then it just makes it so hard for us to want to buy it now. And I feel like now we're shifting away from it, where it's convenient. You can either like buy something super quick, but just hearing ethically and sustainability wise, like how damaging they are to themselves and to others regarding their company and to even the consumers and even who their employees are, which that's another story. And I remember doing a whole project on it. And
well, price doesn't always dictate quality. And things have changed. The way we produce products, not just apparel, any type of product, is different than it was 20 years ago. And that's one of the reasons why I think thrifting has absolutely exploded, and so has resale, because there are so many quality products out there from generations ago, and people realize that, and they've stood the test of time. And you can see that there was more quality, more care put into them than what you're seeing today being produced, for the most part, not everything.
I agree. Do you think more people should buy more thrifting or buy more sustainably? Like, how do you think people should buy to make, and regarding maybe the goal of wanting to be more sustainable to the environment, or whether it's just better for a business or for an industry in itself? What's your feeling on how people should buy, or even in a retail setting, like brick and mortar or online on a retail website, Amazon, etc. How do you think people should buy in a consumer-friendly way?
Well, that's a big question. So I'm gonna dial it back and kind of break it down. I would have to say, first, being conscious of what you already have and what you're buying. And not buying multiples necessarily of things, being conscious of, well, twofold. When you are purchasing, looking for products that's going to last, that are going to be multifunctional, right? So not necessarily buy less, although that is one of my big advocates because there's just too much stuff out there, but reuse and repurpose. So it's not just secondhand and thrifting, but take advantage of what you have and repurpose it as well for your needs. Okay, what was, I think I forgot.
It was a question.
I'll elaborate more on the question.
Yeah.
Since you done a lot of retail strategy and learning about consumers, what would you just say that people need to do more? Obviously, you said shop less, but is there things that we need to do as consumers to help this issue of just overconsumption?
Shop smarter, using product that you can repurpose and reuse and sharing. Thinking about, is it made sustainably? Is it what happens at the end of its life? One of the things that I always talk about and I teach about is this new concept of keep the end in mind. So as you're building this product, as you're making this product, what happens? What's that life cycle going to be? How is it going to end? Can it be reused? Can it be purposeful and not be wasteful? Right now, in the past few years, past generations, it was very lateral. It just ended. You created the product, you used the product, you got rid of the product. No one really thought, well, how can I continue to reuse it? And that's how we ended up with huge landfills and so much waste.
Exactly. And how do you repurpose them? And do you think we're going to see more later on, within the next maybe 20 to 30 years, or even just now, in the decades, right now, 2020s, how we can kind of repurpose clothes more? And how do you think, with what is already instilled sustainability wise, how do you think retail brands now and just retail, just stores itself, how do you think we're going to kind of repurpose reusable or more sustainable values into our clothes, and how to help maybe combat this issue? What do you think is going to happen now? Well,
we're seeing a lot of brands engage with that. A lot of big brands saying, bring your products back in, we'll help mend them, we'll help repurpose them. If you don't want them anymore, we'll take them and we'll create them and make them new again. So I think they're seeing that. I also think there is a big movement, especially with the younger generation, Gen Z into Gen Alpha, of being more hands-on. There is a huge rise in demand in sewing, learning how to sew with these younger kids. And in high schools, they're actually now having clubs where they're learning how to sew and they're mending their own clothes or they're making new things, which is kind of a throwback to 40 years ago when there were actually home ec classes in high school and you learned how to sew. So I think the pendulum has swung so far to technology, and now it's starting to swing back a little, and people are starting to say, let me try and do this. Be more hands-on, be more in touch, and be more connected. And that's why we're also seeing, really a shift back to in-person, right? So think about secondhand. There's not a lot of companies that are secondhand resell that have a presence online, right? Because it's so much stuff, it's hard to take pictures, hard to get it all up. So this younger generation is enjoying that experience, going into the store, touching, feeling, making a decision, putting it all together, being in the moment more so.
I agree, especially because now, since everything is just so digital, I feel after a while, just with everything just being so online, you just get sick of it after a while. There's just a burnout. And I think also, I can't believe I'm saying this, but COVID, hear me out, COVID, I think that really dialed into the fact that because we were so cooped up for a while and there were just so many restrictions on where you can go, wearing a mask and this and that and everything, it made people tired of wanting to just always have everything be online, which is how, the retail industry online, where so many brands were really able to kind of have this burst of success because so many people were buying online.
Yeah.
So I think that was just the biggest issue as well. And I think I totally agree where it's so many students now want, retail students and just people in general, our generation and even just older too, want more of a brick and mortar experience because you can really feel the clothes and really talk to them, have that face-to-face communication. Is that your preference of shopping as well? What's your preference?
Yeah, that is totally. I love to be in the stores, see what's going on, look around, see the product, watch the customers. That's when my retail kicks in, and all my experience that I can't walk into a store without thinking business. Right?
And it's so important because even at FAT with the spatial interior design majors, that immersive experience really encourages the whole shopping experience.
Yeah.
And going back to technology, what's your stance on the use of technology, AI, whatever you want to kind of hit on with that question in today's time in terms of fashion or art in general?
Okay.
A big question.
That's another really big question. You guys like these really intense ones. So, let's see, AI, as I advocate in all my classes, AI is not the answer. AI is a tool to be more effective and more efficient and to allow people working in our industry the opportunity to be even more creative and more forward thinking because they have more time. So if you think about it, AI, if you use it properly as a tool, it saves time, right? That opens up that time for people to look into different aspects, ask more questions, try new things on their own. So I think it's a real balance. It's a huge impact. I think AI now, because it's such a buzz and it's all happening so fast, nobody knows exactly where this is going to lead. I mean, there's all sorts of theories, but I think we just have to kind of work through it and figure out what's next, how to best use it, you know, how is it going to work for all of us? I remember when online shopping and the internet blew up. I'm that old and embarrassed to say that, but I do remember, I feel like I'm seeing that to a degree. Again, nobody knew what online shopping meant. There were the extremists that said, oh, nobody's ever going to go into a store again. They're only going to buy online. There were others that said, no, people aren't going to do this. They're not going to know what the product feels like. And then it had to kind of work itself out. And now, over the past few years, even with the spike during COVID, there's a balance between brick and mortar, in person, and buying online. So I think that will hopefully eventually happen with AI, not just in our industry, but across the board.
I agree. Now, I do want to ask you, because I remember this from our class where we had the project where we went to the Coterie show. We had to talk with a designer, write a paper, and even like make a presentation quickly, just briefly talking about like what the brand was and regarding like their background and everything. I want to ask you, because I remember when I was interviewing my brand for the show, it was Drew Clothing, and I was talking with a designer. And just regarding AI, I remember, obviously I totally agree. I do think AI is a tool. Do I think it should be used as an answer and used frequently? Probably not for sustainability purposes. But regarding the tool aspect of it, he was telling me, because I was asking questions about, what inspires him to create the designs that he did and what he's still doing now. And he was telling me that like a lot of the times when he creates designs, and he notices it with a lot of designers today, is that there's a lack of originality in some cases. Like there's still development and there's still growth for new and original thinking with fashion, but a lot of the fashion that we have today is continuously being recycled and regurgitated, where there's a lack of continuously creating new designs and forward thinking with fashion. Do you agree with this? And with AI, like, do you think that it is doing that, and what could we maybe do to combat this issue? Like, what can we now look for to be more fashion forward with the use of technology and through other resources?
Kind of like what I said before, is allowing AI to do the work, to make it more efficient, to give the opportunity for anyone more time to think and be creative on their own, right? And be more inspired and not have to rely so much on the technology, but really kind of more digging deeper and finding your own creative inspiration and moving forward from that.
I see.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get away from AI.
Okay.
Every time the podcast classes, AI always takes over the discussion. Well, I mean, it's important, but sometimes too much
It's not the end all
really
be all.
can get crazy. So let's get back to FIT and just students in general. What do most students come up to you talking about, like internships or the industry and misconceptions they have? Or just like students, I'm assuming you work in industry, you work with a lot of young people, and like people first time in the industry. What are like some things you see and you're like, don't do that, why would you do that?
They have made a decision in their mind, this is the career path that they want to do. I want to go into buying, I want to go into design, I want to go into product development. And that's when I cringe and they're like, I only want an internship doing this. I'm like, no, now is the opportunity to explore your options. Take any internship you can get to learn. And it will also help you figure out, do you like this? Do you not? Is there something else you might be interested in? You might have your heart set on buying. I know I did, and when I graduated college, I'm like, this is my career path, this is what's gonna happen. It didn't, and I learned from that, and it was the best thing, because you have to live in the moment, understand, try these different things. I would be working, and I had one position, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. I'd love to work in marketing. I took advantage of opportunities and went in that direction and tried it. So any kind of experience you get is going to help build who you are, build your journey, and help make you, have more clarity on where to go.
Absolutely.
I I would totally agree. No, that's really good advice, and especially I think regarding like don't settle.
Mm-mm.
Don't settle. You're too young to settle unless like you. I mean, like this has been like your calling, and you know it was since you were like maybe like I'm just learning to walk. But at the same time, though, it's like there's so much you can learn, and you don't know anything until you really find out and try it out for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. And I also want to ask you, because I know it's just regarding like just what you want to do professionally wise. You do learn it through the internships, and you do learn it through jobs and opportunities that you get, whether it's on campus or outside of campus and beyond. Because now it is internship time. People are getting excited about internships, especially within the spring and the summer, especially as it's what I'm shooting for. I want to ask you, how do you think people should go about applying to internships, and what advice do you have maybe for our age group now that are applying for internships and like all throughout college? And because I know it's scary because it's like we're in New York City, so you have a lot of competition. What do you think is the best advice you can give to our age group regarding getting one, and what should we do in this case if we're scared?
So probably two things. Number one, network.
Get that LinkedIn already.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared. Take advantage of every situation that you're in, especially if you're in school and guest speakers come in. We bring a lot of guest speakers in. We hold a lot of panel discussions, different events. We're lucky enough because FIT is here in New York City, and we have access to go into showrooms, into stores, see behind the scenes, able to expose our students to pretty much every aspect of the industry. Take advantage of that. Connect with people there. Even connect with your fellow classmates, because you never know in a few years who's going to be at what company that you might be interested in, and you can reach out. So I think that is the number one. Always connect, network, be aware. And the other thing is, when you are interviewing for internships, show curiosity. Have questions, not just the typical questions, but ask more of the why. Well, what's the culture like here? Not just what's your typical day like. Really start to understand the holistic picture and not just the narrow responsibilities of that job.
That's great advice. And so you've worked FIT, LAM, Parsons, some of the strongest fashion schools in America, the world even. And we talk about how we're always constantly growing and learning new things. What have students taught you, or that you've been inspired by them?
Well, I always tell my students, I learn as much from them as they can learn from me, right? Because one of the things I love to do is understand different perspectives. See what they see through their eyes. So one of the things, and you brought it up, you mentioned it, I take my students to the Coterie Show, which is a trade show at the Javits Center, twice a year. I love bringing my students there, not only because I can expose them to what goes on, all these different brands, how everything works, and to be able to see it in action, but I have to say I love to go to see it through their eyes. I've been going to that show for over 20 years, and every time I bring a group of students, I see something different. So I love being able to understand their perspective too.
That's so sweet.
That is cool. Have you, what was like the coolest like retail brand that, like, I know that's probably like such a loaded question, but like, what was like the coolest like retail brand that you saw at the Coterie Show, or like one moment from the Coterie Show that you loved, and like to maybe inspire like the youth that are into fashion to go, like what is like been the coolest thing that you've seen at the Coterie Show before, like regarding?
I think I have to say I love to see all the brands there and how different they are, right? Because they have, I mean, I don't even know the exact number, but I know this time around there's over 800 brands exhibiting at the shows in February. I am always so surprised how everything can look so different. The brands really take it upon themselves to differentiate and really create who they are, and they're able to communicate that to the customer and to the students when they're walking around. So it doesn't always necessarily look like a sea of the same. You do see the trends, you'll see consistent trends, but you're also going to see what sets these brands apart from each other.
And talking about the National Retail Association, can you tell us more about that? Because I know you're affiliated with that, and it's an amazing resource and Association. Can you speak more on that?
Sure. NRF, which is the National Retail Federation, I am the co-advisor for the chapter at FIT. They have over 100 schools that they have chapters at, and the National Retail Federation is an industry organization of retailers and any other companies that are affiliated with the retail process. Even technology companies, companies that, build out the stores. There's so many different aspects of it. What's wonderful about it, and they have the student program and student association, and there's a 2-day event right before the NRF Big Show in New York in January. They bring students in. There are inspiring retail leaders that speak to them. They also have the opportunity the second day to meet with executives from different companies that the NRF brings in to help mentor them, help talk to them about what is happening in the industry, help them network as well. So it's a great opportunity for students to, again, get involved, understand what's going on in the industry right now, and figure out how they fit in and what their path should be.
So through the schools, or if it's even like without the schools as well, how do you think students can get into the student program so they can be able to network and meet these retail leaders and professionals to help maybe jumpstart their careers and help jumpstart their jobs, and could even help them land internships and other positions as well? How do you think, for the audience watching, they can how do they start getting into the retail or get involved with the student program?
It's a open club organization. Come to the first meeting.
There you go. Show up.
You guys
Show up, be present, and learn, get involved. There's so many different activities. Our group holds different events. They bring in guest speakers. They do different activities. We had a headshot day as part of a fundraiser. They're trying to bring in people from the industry to talk about what should you have on your resume. What are internships, like how to get internships. So it's really all the information that you need to be successful and to try and get into the industry. It's giving the opportunity, but the students have to take the opportunity. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
They need,
right there.
Yeah, they need the initiative to take the first step to get there.
Seriously.
That sounds amazing. Are there any other business companies or resources that are not talked about enough regarding just the fashion industry or just the industry as a whole that students or just young people need to be focusing on?
I think the small startups, the little mom and pop stores. I think everybody kind of forgets about that. They look at all the big retailers, all the luxury retailers. There's so many different smaller retailers out there that are making an impact. And really to try and find those as well.
Exactly. And I'm just going to go back to National Retail Federation for 1 second, because I had this one question. I remember when I was talking with you before our meeting, or it was our meeting before this, you were telling me about your experience recently at the National Retail Federation regarding the amazing, it was a 5-day event if I'm not mistaken.
3-day.
3-day, right. I would love to chat with you more about that and learn more about your experience with that event. Would you like to kind of tell us like what happened and during the event and everything, so we know what, for example, what could be an event at the National Retail Federation, so all of the aspirational members can feel excited and inspired to want to join the club or even in part of this organization and to get involved professionally. What happened? So give us the tea.
So one of the big things, if you do join the NRFSA, National Retail Federation Student Association, not only are you able to go to the student program for the 2 days, but you are also able to go to the big show itself. So you are being exposed to all of these different companies supporting retail. It is not the retailers themselves that are there, it's all of the support companies. So there's a lot of technology companies. For example, Amazon Web Services was there. There's also a lot of smaller companies that do the behind the scenes technology in regards to engaging with the customer. How do you do all your social media? Like, how do you interact? How do you find the customers? All of that technology, those companies are there. There are also companies that are selling hard goods, meaning like the kiosks, the signage in the store. So it really runs the gamut of the different companies that are there, and it's kind of a realization how much support goes into running a retail business.
Which is a lot,
Mhm.
especially if it's like you then have like, a retail business like nationwide and then even going like internationally too.
Well, and that's the big
Stressful.
thing too with the NRF, it is international. It is a global organization, so there are a lot of exhibitors and attendees from all different countries as well. Because retail now is all global.
Does it ever get overwhelming?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, just as like a student entering, it's my first year, and there's so many elements, and so many aspects where it can get like, what's going on? I'm scared.
Yeah.
For sure.
It can get really scary. Like I like even just like not only just with like fashion and retail, but even like beauty in itself as well. Like with competition and even me working for a startup company right now, Sherry Cosmetics, it's like scary because it's like there's so many beauty brands out there and just so many retail brands out there too. There's just such an not even oversaturation, but just it's saturated. I can't even deny it. It's like it's scary to start a business now and to even get involved with something involved with being a creative. How do you feel? Do you think that there's still, I mean, I'm sure there probably is, but do you think there still is room for creativity and originality regarding like starting a retail brand of a sort? Or what advice do you think you can give to someone who is an aspirational entrepreneur that wants to maybe open up a retail shops nationwide or nationally beyond?
Or just a business in general.
Yeah, business in general. Like, what's your advice to it? Especially because you're a consulting company.
Mhm.
What's your advice?
There's always an opportunity to start your own business, to be an entrepreneur, whether it is starting your own company or joining another company and starting something new for them, and having that entrepreneurial spirit is always so important. I think starting a business right now, to your point, is difficult, it's tough, but if you know what product or service you want to provide and you know it's answering a need that's out there, there's always a chance for success. Really understanding who the company is, who the brand is, what the product or service is, and making sure that's known and differentiated from, to your point, all the other brands that are out there right now.
And I think the hard step is the first one, like just bringing the brain to conceptualizing that idea. And
Yeah.
you're working in strategy. Where do you think your first step is when it comes to just strategizing, like, okay, where are we going to go with this?
Who's our target market?
Okay.
And what else are they buying now? What would make them want to buy our product? Is it different enough? Is it worthy for them to take a look at to say, I need this?
And
So understanding that target customer.
And working in strategy, what would you say is the hardest part? Like obviously we said like conceptualizing that idea, but how do you, when you're strategizing and working in, with companies and businesses, where do you see when things get tricky and hard, where do you step in and like, okay, let's reroute? Where do you think that your objective when it comes to, fixing, rerouting that idea, where do you start from?
I think part of it is, and I'm going to go back to the target customer, I think a lot of startup companies don't have a clear vision of who that target customer is. They think everybody will buy their product because it's so wonderful. I think just realizing where do I fit into the landscape and who my customer is just as important as what the product is or the service.
I agree. No, seriously, it's true. I think you have to have a target customer and consumer to an extent. Like, yes, obviously for like, Amazon, for example, and for just extreme Microsoft and just Google and extremely like huge companies, obviously they get to a point where they know their target customer could be literally anybody because they know that they can deliver things to people in an efficient and fast rate regarding their services and their products and everything that they can offer that businesses will put into their businesses, especially, through Amazon, for example. Their target customer can be literally anybody.
Yeah.
But for brands that are starting out, like retailers and beyond, it's really important, and to your point, to really make sure that you do have a target customer and you kind of have a niche, like a niche, but a niche big enough where your target customer can be a large group of people,
Yeah.
especially even like social media and starting out like being like an influencer, and creating content or even advertising and marketing your business through social media. Just having those deliverables by being able to attract that consumer and just being able to make content that is able to reach out to that niche and that group is so important.
Yeah.
And do you think that social media is like a great way to kind of have your niche and kind of be deliverable and obviously like you probably don't use like social media do you use social media professionally and like how do you use it, or like what do you think is like a big mistake that like other brands or retailers make through the use of social media regarding marketing content?
Well, I think social media is amazing and a great tool and channel to get the message of the brand out there, to connect with the customer, to be authentic. And I think a lot of companies kind of stumble sometimes if they are putting out different messages of who they are. So keeping their message and their vision of, let me start again.
It was a loaded question.
It's a lot of stuff. Okay. Very often, companies will send mixed messages to customers, right, through different channels. It is extremely important to keep the message the same, but just deliver it in different ways. And keep the authenticity of who they are and what they stand for. And always have that message, even if it's delivered in different ways.
How did you adapt to the social media world pre-social media, like in the industry? And then how did you, I'm gonna rephrase that, we're gonna cut. I always forget that we can cut. I feel like
we can cut, that's why I thought
there's like an
too.
audience here. I'm like always nervous, like, what's next? Oh my goodness, okay.
This is new for us.
Yes, this is only our second episode. This is our second podcast, like second time. So talking about social media, how did you adapt to it in terms of the industry? And then how did you learn, or what trait of that adaptability do you use in the industry regarding just more than just social media?
In regards to what? So,
Well, just the industry, because obviously adapting to that social media was a lot, I presume, regarding just the fashion industry as a whole. And then how did that trait of adaptability was easier? Oh my goodness, we're gonna cut this question again. Oh my goodness, you know what, I'm just gonna do it this way, okay. How is it adapting to social media in the fashion industry? Here we go.
Okay, so the fashion industry was really quick to adapt social media because it was just like advertising, marketing, it was just a new channel. They were used to making commercials and having that on. Now it changed, now the commercials were getting smaller and they were different messages. So it's still the same concept. There was just the opportunity of, now we have a whole bunch of different channels to connect with that customer. So that really helped, I think, also with social media take off because people were familiar with getting those messages. Companies were confident in getting those messages out there. This is just a new channel.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. Because it's like, I think now, because people's attention spans are getting shorter, you need to execute and deliver, I think, not only as an influencer, like you're individually just promoting yourself, or you have a consulting company or another retailer or, brand or business or whatever. Like you need to make sure like your deliverables with your content are short and sweet.
Yeah.
You get to the point quick, you attract them quick, because you only have I think they're saying now like a 3-second window to really attract your ideal customer and consumer, whoever is watching the video, and making sure that they're engaged. And then you get more of the recognition from what you're advertising or promoting.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. And I think the trick is now, because our attention spans are getting slower, because you can easily just swipe and go on to the next thing that you're watching or what you're viewing, not only on Instagram but also on TikTok and all the other social media platforms that we'll use. But it's insane with how it's scary how quick our short attention spans are getting. And you know what? Do you think it's going to get even continuously shorter in the future? Like what's your feeling? And what maybe if it's 3 seconds to gather someone's attention, what do you think is the next way of how we're going to market in retail? Well, just a photo.
Yeah, that's what it's coming to. Less is more. How do you make an impact as quick as possible. I think that is the message that some retailers forget about. They want to put more out there, get us, splatter it all over the place. But you want to make sure it is less is more impactful, and leaving that potential customer wanting more. Have them make sure they have a question that they want to learn more about you, right? So they're looking forward to seeing what you have to say next.
Right. I would love to shift, because I remember when you were first talking about, your retail experience, you've been a buyer for Macy's and Bloomingdale's. I would love to chat about that, especially for all the buyers and aspirational buyers that are watching. This is for you. I would love to know more about what you were doing. What was your role as a buyer, and how difficult was it for you to first start getting into it? Because I know that's what you were wanting to do from the beginning, pretty much. What were you doing as a buyer, and how difficult was it? I know it's notoriously known for being it can be tricky.
Yeah. So I was recruited right out of college by Macy's for their executive training program. What I did not realize is within a year, Macy's was going to claim bankruptcy and get bought out by Federated Department Stores. So that kind of shifted my career path. That I left and worked for Belk Stores briefly as an assistant buyer there. I then went back to Macy's when it was under Federated and was called Macy's Merchandising Group, and I went back into the product development for all their private labels. So I did that for a few years, loved it, loved being involved in that whole process, and then moved over to Bloomingdale's, because they also own them, and was a buyer in men's first, and then a buyer in intimate apparel. So I think one of the challenges being a buyer that nobody talks about a lot is making sure you don't put your personal opinion into your buying decisions professionally. You have a huge amount of budget to buy product, to put into your stores. You need to separate yourself, know who your customer is, and make sure you're always buying for that customer, right? Don't let your personal opinions or feelings about the product kind of seep into those business decisions, which is tough. It's hard, especially depending on the product category that you're buying for. In the beginning, mine was slightly easier because I was buying menswear. I was in the men's department. Well, that's okay. I know I'm looking more at the product and the fabrication. I'm analyzing the numbers more, and I'm not wearing it. So I don't have as much of a influence in it. I was able to really focus my decisions on the financial components and on the data.
Very interesting, yeah, because I was going to say, it's very analytical regarding the numbers. Yes. And how to make sure you're getting the right inventory, and depending on the supply, and how much people want to actually buy the products and stuff like that. It can be scary, and what was and stressful, because you want to make sure that obviously it really does affect the performance of Macy's, for example, and Bloomingdale's and all the other retailers that are involved within Macy's and
your job.
And your job too. So were there times where it was there's an issue, we overbought this, or things were being underbought, and it was more of a demand for those specific garments? When were those frequent times where it was just the unpredictability of how to compensate for the amount of supply versus the demand? What was your experience with that?
Well, I always say in this industry and in New York in general, expect the unexpected and be ready to face it head on. There are always going to be challenges. There were plenty of times that the product did show up, something happened in the production, or this isn't hitting the way I thought it was going to hit. I didn't think, the sales aren't what we expected the sales to be. There was an issue with something. You always just have to be ready to say, okay, here's the problem, let's address it. What's the best decision at this time and the best route to take? So I think really being able to take a step back, see the situation, say, okay, here's my options, weigh them out, which is the best one to take, and then execute that.
Real. And that can get chaotic in a team environment. And you've been in the industry for a hot minute. How have you dealt with conflict? Because I can assume lots of conflict has probably erupted. How have you guided that in a professional setting? Because for me, I know it's so easy to just, go off or take it personally and, not make the smartest choices. But how have you, guided and moderated a good professional setting of conflict and drama?
Compromise, but more importantly, listen. You're going to have a perspective, you're going to have your own opinion, but being able to listen to others that you're working with and hear their opinion might change your perspective. So always being open to hear other people's thoughts and opinions. And really, to your point, one person doesn't do one job in retail. It takes a community. It takes a lot of team members to get that product from concept to the consumer, right? A lot of people have jobs in that, responsibilities, expectations, and you need to make sure that the group who is producing this knows that their piece, their contribution is important to the whole process. So I think really try and instill that community and focus and purpose is important in any work environment when you're working with different people.
Okay. So no cussing out?
No.
I mean, yes, definitely not a professional setting. Are you kidding? Okay, when you're outside the office building, maybe, but that's.
But you gotta think about your reputation.
True.
Everyone's always listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True. And regarding buying, just going back to there for just 1 second, I am just curious regarding the buying aspect. Is it more difficult to be a buyer for, especially regarding your experience, for men's intimate, women's, children's, which out of which categories, which one would you say is the most difficult to be a buyer for? And to make sure that you're keeping up with the level of stock and demand?
They're all difficult for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You have different challenges no matter what product that you're making or selling or buying. So I can't say one is worse than the other or harder than the other. They are all challenging because they all have issues that you're going to have to address and face. And some might be, as you mentioned, a quality or a stock issue. The other one might be challenging because it's the fabrication or it's the way it's sewn. So there's all different reasons why they can be challenging, and just acknowledging those going in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Because I was gonna say they all can be so challenging, and it's for example women's, because if you'll have the level of different types of categories of garments there, and then it's just and then for men's too, it's not, that different for women. So it's if one's being affected by, let's just say, for example, the weather. And I've been hearing from all of my professors now in my classes, because now we're heading towards the spring season of fashion. And now we're experiencing a lot of cold weather, especially in New York, for example. How do you think this is going to affect buyers with the upcoming season of spring, but we're dealing with the unpredictability of weather, and do you think that's going to affect how they're going to keep up with their supply, their sales? From a buying perspective that you have, how difficult do you think, or the factor of weather is for now, predicting how much stock and inventory you have for your basics, your key items, your seasonal items? Tell us more about that.
So that's always a challenge, is timing. I think in the industry it's twofold. First, I think retailers have realized that people are buying more wear now, right? So they are not there's still the seasons, but there's a lot more transitional product, and you're not just going from, heavy coats to swimwear overnight, which had happened very often in the past. It's more of a slower transition. And also the capabilities and the turnaround times with production has gotten quicker. So they can react faster. And it can be a little bit more personalized, not just to the customer, but also to the environment around them. And just being aware, there's no crystal ball, but you can use history and current business to foresee what could possibly happen and be ready.
Yeah, you have to. You have to, because I think the buying now factor, because example, like we were saying before, consumers are becoming more educated and more curious in how they have to buy, with knowing especially like how climate change is going and the unpredictability of weather, which is, I would say, a sign of climate change, I would say, with the extremity of what is not seen before regarding New York, for example. I think it's important to understand that, consumers are becoming more educated. And I think because of that, it's allowing us to want to buy what is now in stock, how to combat the weather at that moment.
Yeah.
And then we continuously keep buying on schedule over time, and I think that's the most important thing. So it's cool to understand that, like, from a buying perspective, you just have to buy what is ideally in that moment and just be prepared.
Yeah, well, the customer now also wants instant gratification, especially the younger generations. Yeah, they're used to getting everything at the moment.
So you have wise words, as we can see now, when you're constantly telling students, teaching them. What would you tell your young self if she was in the class? And you could tell her one thing.
Take advantage of every opportunity that is presented. Ask more questions, be inquisitive, and be willing to take a risk, even if it might be not the right decision, but to acknowledge that it wasn't the right decision and learn from it and change. Everything is experiential building.
No, seriously, you're good.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us here in the Cubicle. It means a lot, and we hope you have a good day.
Well, thank you for having me.
Our interns and associates are very grateful for your expertise and your wisdom.
Yes.
And yes, thank you guys so much for watching the Cubicle Podcast. This is episode 2 with Professor Bridgit Lavery-Palmieri. We hope you enjoyed. And yes, stay tuned for next week for our next guest. We're all set in the Cubicle.
Bye.
Bye.